typically something that happened when I was a kid, but I still think almost it to this day. I was around 14, a long time ancient at the time. Amid this time, we lived in a house that was exceptionally near to a McDonald's eatery. It was less than a mile absent, and every so often we would walk there. It was exceptionally helpful, especially late at night when we were truly hungry. So, I keep in mind that one night I was up beautiful late. It must have been end of the week, or I do not know why else I would have been up at that hour, but I was truly hungry and there wasn't much to eat around the house. I told my mother that I was progressing to walk to the McDonald's and would be back before long. She told me to take care with it being so late at night, but for the most part, our neighborhood was exceptionally secure and there had never been any problems. I truly do not keep in mind what time precisely it was, but I would figure perhaps around 11. So I cleared out the house and strolled to the conclusion of the road. At that point I went one or two of squares in another course, and after that the McDonald's was right there. The zone the McDonald's was in was not truly by any other businesses, and it was exceptionally calm at this time of night. I didn't truly see any other cars or individuals out the whole time I was strolling. As I came around the corner of the walkway and begun to enter the McDonald's stopping part, I take a note they showed up to be closed. There were no cars within the stopping parcel, and the lights were exceptionally dim. I was truly baffled to see this, but at that point I take a note something else. Standing distant, absent close the entryways to the McDonald's was a man, and he was wearing a full Ronald McDonald outfit. His confront was painted and everything, and the fellow was fair standing there by himself. I had to do a twofold take to form beyond any doubt that I was seeing things accurately, and in truth I was. As I stood there looking at Ronald McDonald, he at that point looked over at me. That's when I chosen that I ought to go back domestic, but sometime recently I turned around. I saw him start to walk in my course. This truly freaked me out. I began strolling as quick as I seemed back domestic. I got onto the walkway and turned the corner. At that point, I had to go back a couple of pieces. Sometime recently, I would be on my road. After strolling on the walkway, I before long listened strides turn the corner behind me. I looked back and saw the Ronald McDonald fellow. When I saw him, my heart sank. Now he was taking after me. I was actually strolling as fast as I conceivably may. He proceeded to take after me, and he was appearing to go beautiful quick as well. When I saw him strolling at that speed and looking right at me, I began running. I didn't indeed bother to see back, since I was fair as well creeped out by this. I ran all the way back to my road, and after that got all the way to my house. At that point, I rapidly went interior, bolted the entryway behind me, and after that looked out to the road. Perhaps a diminutive afterward, I saw the fellow strolling down it. He was strolling exceptionally slowly and sort of looking around. It was one of the creepiest things I've ever seen. I moved absent from the window so that he wouldn't take note me, and after that, I never saw him once more. Over the long time, I thought almost it numerous times. Why was he dressed up as Ronald McDonald by himself within the stopping part? I truly do not know. And why did he follow me? I'm truly happy that I was able to urge absent from him. When I was 16, a long time ancient, I got my to begin with working at an office store. It wasn't my favourite work of all the ones that I've worked, but when I got it, I was exceptionally energized. Fair being able to form cash at 16, a long time ancient, was truly decent. I had as of late got my driver's license, but I would need to gain sufficient cash to purchase a car. Meanwhile, my guardians would drive me to and from work. We did not have an additional car to save for me to drive around, but it wasn't as well huge of a bargain since my guardians may continuously get me to work for my shifts on time. Also, we as it were lived almost 10 minutes absent from the store that I worked at. By my store right over the road was this McDonald's. Other than that, there wasn't much else within the prompt zone. So, one night I was working lovely late until the store closed. After I got off of work, I saw a comment from my mom saying she was picking up my small brother to begin with. At that point, she would come a small bit afterward to induce me. I didn't think it was that enormous of a bargain. Perhaps she would be there 20 minutes afterward. But the store that I was working at was closing, so I strolled over to the McDonald's over the road. Like many other McDonald's, it was open late. I was moreover lovely hungry. Things looked calm. And when I got interior, I saw that there was one representative behind the counter, and nobody showed up to be eating interior. So, I requested something little. I do not keep in mind what, and after that I got it. I strolled into the eating room, and that's when I take a note that there was really one other individual there. It was a man sitting at a booth within the corner. He was kind of slumped over a small and perusing a book. The fellow had long straight hair and a goatee. I went and sat in another booth on the other side of the eatery by a window looking out to the stopping parcel. At that point, I texted my mother and told her that I would be holding up for her at the McDonald's. I sat there eating and going on my phone for the foremost portion. My mother before long texted me back, letting me know that she would be there in around 10 minutes. I keep in mind that I was sort of confronting the other fellow within the eatery, not straightforwardly, but he was somewhat in my vision if I looked to the correct a small bit. When I did, I take a note that he showed up to be just staring at me, and he was gazing at me for an extremely long time. This was kind of peculiar. I looked absent and attempted to overlook him, but at some point afterward, I looked back, and he was looking in my heading once more. I didn't truly know what he was doing, but it was kind of inching me out a small bit. A few minutes went by, and I was hoping that my mother would get there before long. I didn't particularly like being alone within the eatery with this guy, whoever he was. At that point, I take a note headlights within the stopping parcel and a car entering. It looked a bit like my mom's car, so I got up and began strolling for the entryways. I felt much way better when I saw this. I strolled out and cleared out the McDonald's and began heading towards the car driving within the stopping parcel. But that's when I take a note that it wasn't really my mom's. It was an awfully comparative SUV to the one that my mother drove, same colour and everything, but it wasn't very the same show and likely not the same year either. I seemed to tell that it was diverse, and I was truly disillusioned. And after that the car finished up turning around and taking off. In the interim, as I stood there within the stopping part, I take a note the man taking off the McDonald's. He began fair standing around perhaps 20 feet absent from me. I wasn't looking at him, but it felt like he was looking at me. This was making me truly awkward, so I just started strolling. I didn't truly know where I was reaching to go, but I was fair strolling within the stopping parcel. There was actually fair one car there. I'm not beyond any doubt on the off chance that it had a place to the man or to one of the McDonald's workers that was working. As I strolled, I listened the man begin to walk after me within the stopping parcel. I kept going, but I was presently amazingly apprehensive. Abruptly, I saw my mom. She was driving down the street, and inside a couple of seconds, she entered the McDonald's stopping parcel. I rapidly ran to the traveller side entryway and got interior. At that point, I closed it and bolted it. My mother inquired me who that man was. I told her that he was acting peculiar and kind of taking after me. At that point, he began strolling back towards the entrance of McDonald's. We cleared out after that. I feel so fortunate that my mother appeared up when she did, or else I do not know what I would have done. I'm not beyond any doubt why that man was apparently taking after me around, but it was truly frightening. I utilised to work at McDonald's a long time prior. I worked there for add up to of 6 months, and for the foremost portion, I delighted in it. When I was there, I fair worked part-time, so I'd get like 20 or 30 hours a week. One night, I worked late. Things were beautiful calm for the final few hours, but it had been active prior. After I got off of work, I cleared out McDonald's and drove back domestic. I lived alone in a loft amid this time. It took almost 10 minutes to urge back, so it wasn't that distant. Be that as it may, I did have to make a few turns. I wasn't truly paying that near consideration, but I did take note that the same car drove behind me for most of the way back. When I pulled into my loft complex stopping part, the car behind me did as well. In any case, it was an enormous complex, and parcels of individuals lived there, so I wasn't concerned at all. I got out of my car, and didn't indeed take note where the other vehicle had gone. At that point, I went interior my loft, and was approximately to shower and alter, but sometime recently I had a chance to. I listened some person attempt opening my flat entryway. This caused me to pause where I was and tune in. I truly couldn't accept what I had listened. Cruel. No one ever attempted entering my loft sometime recently. Seemed this have been a mischance, or was some person really attempting to enter my put? As I stood there, things were quiet for some seconds. I figured that whoever it was gone presently, and I'd chosen to walk over to the entryway. When I got there, I looked through my peephole to the other side. But when I did, I saw this man standing there. He was to some degree tall with dim hair, and was wearing a sweatshirt. I had no thought who he was, but at that point I pondered in case this was the same individual driving behind me. Possibly they were taking after me, but I seemed not think of why. For a minute, I considered replying the entryway since I was inquisitive, but I rapidly chosen not to. I kept observing through the peephole, and the man stayed there for a whereas. He was fair looking around, and after that at long last, he strolled absent. I was truly befuddled by this. Perhaps it was a botch, but generally, I didn't truly think that it was. Well, for the rest of the night, things were fine. I did not see the fellow once more, and there were no more thumps on my entryway or anything like that. The following day, I had work once more at McDonald's. I was once more working another night shift. Well, some hours in, things were decently calm. I keep in mind taking note a man walk in. For a second, I didn't think much of it until I recognized the guy. I realized that it was the same man that had attempted entering my flat the night sometime recently. I couldn't accept it. I was working at the Enlist and taking people's orders. Be that as it may, the man did not come up and arrange anything. Instead, he promptly turned and strolled into the feasting room range. I observed him take a situate and was confronting me. He did not quickly see at me in spite of the fact that he fair showed up to go on his phone, and I attempted my best to fair overlook him. Over the another hour or so, I looked back at the man a few times, and he remained there. I was confounded as to what he was doing. He showed up to be looking at me a few times, but I didn't know why. After he was there for perhaps 2 hours in add up to, the man got up and cleared out. He never bought anything and didn't say a word. I was happy that he was gone, in spite of the fact that I had perhaps an hour cleared out of my move. It went by beautiful great, and after that I was off and soon go home. I cleared out McDonald's, and after that headed out to my car. Once interior, I begun driving back to my flat once more, and this time I was paying way better consideration. I taken note the same car taking after me back. I realized that this was more than likely the same man. But why was he taking after me? I went all the way back to my flat complex. But right some time recently I pulled in, I turned, and the car turned with me. I went around the square, but at that point chosen to actually go to my loft. The car remained behind me the complete time. I pulled into the stopping parcel, and the car taken after me, and stopped in a space not as well distant absent. Once I stopped, I got out of my car truly quick and begun strolling to my flat. When I did, I listened to the man taking off his car and strides rapidly drawing closer. I looked over and saw the man running towards me at full speed. I fair begun running like insane. I went for the entryway when I got interior the loft building. I had perhaps a 30-foot lead on the fellow. At that point, I ran down the corridor from my entryway and scrambled to open it. As I was doing so, I listened to the man running at me. That was one of the foremost frightening minutes I've ever experienced, but gratefully, I got the entryway open fair in time. At that point, I pummeled it closed behind me and bolted it. The guy tried entering, and after that begun slamming on the entryway when it wouldn't open. I called the police at that point. The fellow at that point strolled absent, and I thought he was gone for great, but then maybe 5 minutes afterward he returned. To begin with, he calmly thumped on the entryway, but at that point all of a sudden begun uproariously slamming on it. I still did not know what this guy's issue with me was. He proceeded for another miniature or two until the police got there. They begun talking to the fellow, and I listened a few hollering. In the long run, I figure the man attempted to run absent, but the police caught up with him, and he was captured. After that, I never saw him once more. I didn't work at McDonald's for much longer, and I moreover moved out of that apartment building. To this day, I never found out why the guy was following me. It was truly peculiar and unpleasant. I live by myself in a flat. My unit is on the primary floor of a beautiful unused building, and I've lived here for 2 years now. Final year, in spite of the fact that something truly bizarre happened. It was night time, and I was within the living room of my loft. I think it was perhaps 8 o'clock p.m. or so. At that point, there was a thump at my front entryway. I didn't know who it would be, but I got up to go check at any rate. When I arrived at the entryway, I looked out, and no one was there. This was truly odd. I opened up my apartment entryway and looked out into the corridor. When I did, I still saw no one, but there was a McDonald's pack right before the entryway. To begin with, I thought this had to be a mistake. Maybe it was DoorDash or something, and they cleared out it at the off-base entryway. I picked it up and looked at it, but didn't see any kind of receipt or anything demonstrating who it was for. There was no title or anything. I looked interior the pack, and there showed up to be fair 1 burger interior. I wasn't truly beyond any doubt what to do, but it didn't appear to be a DoorDash. Perhaps one of my companions did this for a few reasons. I truly wasn't beyond any doubt, but I was hungry, so I had the burger. After that, I told some of my companions almost it, the as it were ones that would conceivably do something like that, but they all denied it, so I was truly befuddled. I thought perhaps it was sent to the off-base address. Well, a few evenings afterward, fundamentally the same thing happened once more. There was a thump at my front entryway. This time, it was afterward at night, in spite of the fact that I think it was nearly 11 o'clock. I went to the entryway once more, and no one was there, but there was another McDonald's pack right exterior. I looked interior of it once more, and it showed up to be fare one cheeseburger, like it was some time recently. This was truly befuddling, but this time I cleared out the pack there, perhaps on the chance that it was a botch someone would see the following day. In spite of the fact that the sack was still there, inevitably I had to toss it absent, and tragically the burger went to squander, so I didn't feel blameworthy for eating the other one, but I was truly befuddled as to why I kept getting these McDonald's conveyances. A number of days went by, nothing. At that point I got another one. Once more, I was at domestic, and it was at some point at night. It was perhaps 9 or 10 o'clock, and there was another thump on the entryway. As before, long as I listened it, I got up and ran for the front entryway. By the time I arrived, in spite of the fact that the individual was gone, like each other time, I opened up the entryway and looked out into the corridor, but didn't see anyone at that point. I looked down, and of course, there was another McDonald's pack. I brought it in and opened it up, but there was no nourishment within the sack at all. Tiny as it were thing interior was a standard estimate piece of paper, and on the paper was a printed photo of me. It was the precise picture of myself that I had on my LinkedIn page. I thought this was the most peculiar thing ever. I had completely no thought who was doing this or why. For the another few days, I was on edge at night, holding up for an individual to thump on the entryway once more, but they never did. Since that happened, I haven't gotten any more interesting conveyances or had any more thumps on my door. I still do not know how to clarify it. I utilized to work at McDonald's for a brief time when I was more youthful. I worked at the McDonald's close where I lived, and most of the times I would be a cashier. So one night I was working until 10 o'clock. Prior within the evening, things got truly active. There were a parcel of individuals coming in around 5 o'clock p.m. I had fare as of late begun for the night at that time, and I was working at the front counter taking orders. I keep in mind that a man strolled up to me as of now looking irate almost something. When he got up to me, he said that his arrange was messed up, and he needed another one for gratis. Presently, he didn't have any nourishment with him, and I inquired him on the off chance that he had a receipt. The fellow said no to this as well, so I inquired him where the nourishment was, and he said that he tossed it absent since it was off base. At that point, he requested us once more to redo the arrange, and said that he too needed a blessing card for the inconvenience. I inquired the fellow when he came in, and requested the nourishment that we messed up. I had as it were been working for like 20 or 30 minutes, but I hadn't seen this fellow. I was speculating that he requested before I was here. Perhaps the man wouldn't let me know when, in spite of the fact that he fair said prior. I inquired him to specify, and he denied without any data. He might have effectively fair been attempting to get free nourishment, and I had a feeling that's precisely what he was doing. He began getting more irate, in spite of the fact that when he raised his voice, I told him to take off. Another one of my co-workers moreover taken note when the fellow was getting irate, and he came over to us at that point. The angry man got my title, and after that claimed that he was attending to report me to corporate. I didn't truly care in spite of the fact that I didn't think he really would, and indeed in case he did, I hadn't done anything off base. At last, the man raged out of the eatery. I told my co-worker approximately the circumstance, and I was told that the fellow was totally off base for acting that way. It made me feel a small way better to listen now. We were lovely active, so I got back to work making a difference clients, and before long I had generally overlooked approximately the interaction. When it was afterward that night, in spite of the fact that things calmed down altogether by around 9 o'clock, I was at long last nearly done. We weren't getting clients nearly as regularly, but I was still working behind the front counter. I keep in mind at that point, I take a note a man walk in. It was the same fellow who had been shouting at me some time recently, and he appeared fair as irate in the event that not more. He strolled right up to me, and sometime recently I had a chance to say anything, he begun reviling me out. I keep in mind telling him to take off, but he fair totally disregarded me. He was going on what might be considered an incredible tirade. After shouting at me for a minute or so, he at that point strolled around and begun to go behind the counter. This range was clearly for workers, as it were, and at that time, since of how calm we were, I was the as it were worker behind the counter. When the man got back there, he begun strolling in my course. I yelled at him to take off, which a co-worker within the kitchen range caught. I was perplexed that the man was attending to assault me or something, but instead he snatched a bunch of glasses and after that pummeled them to the floor. By that point, my co-worker arrived at the scene, additionally attempted telling the fellow to take off. It was truly no utilize. The fellow at that point went over and punched one of the computers that we had. He at that point essentially begun picking everything and anything up that he seen reach and hammering it to the ground. My co-worker told me to call the police, so I got out my phone and hit 911. The man at that point strolled out from behind the counter and strolled over to the drink machine. He took a bunch of things like straws and ketchup bundles and began hurling them around. At that point, the fellow said one or two more revile words, took a chair, flipped it over, and after that at last cleared out. After he was gone, I was on the phone with the police. They arrived a brief time afterward, but the man was gone. We had a video of him in spite of the fact that from security film, which we turned over to them. I got off work and cleared out after that, and my chief handled the rest. I'm not truly beyond any doubt what finished up happening. I accepted that the man got banned from the McDonald's area. I as it were worked there for a handful more months, and I never saw him once more. He was by distance the most exceedingly bad client that I ever experienced, in spite of the fact that